All right, so I think that Manchester City is pretty beatable. Like I know that they have a huge amount of points this year. They're currently second in the Premier League. The problem is that if you look through their games, they're basically beating up on a lot of bad teams, and they're not actually beating a lot of good teams. And the thing about a team like Manchester City is that because of their huge budget, like you kind of take it for granted that they're going to be able to perform against bad teams a lot better than say Liverpool or say Arsenal because they have so many good players that they're just able to have good players every game without really succumbing to rest issues as much as a team like Arsenal is. The problem though is that like are they actually able to field the best starting 11 squad in the Champions League? Are they actually able to field like the best starting 11 squad in football? I'm not sure, right? So like let's look through their matches this year, right? Um, they start off. Let's go to October. They lost to Arsenal. That's not good. They beat they beat a Brighton team 2-1. Brighton is actually kind of frisky, but that should be a lot larger than it is. They beat up on a bad Man U team that was really in free fall back in October, and then you look. They tied Chelsea. Chelsea is like a bad team, but they have a lot of talent. They're just kind of disorganized. So the fact that they weren't able to put it away against Chelsea is really concerning. They tied Liverpool. They tied Tottenham. They lost to Aston Villa. To be fair to them, this loss should have been a tie. Like if you actually watch the game, there was that call, that final foul call where the ref should have called advantage, where Jack Grealish had an open space to the goal, but he got fouled by somebody and they didn't call advantage. They just called the foul. So that 100%, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt on that one, but they still should be beating Aston Villa, right? They beat up on Newcastle. Okay, Newcastle's kind of been on free fall. The second time against Tottenham, they managed to beat them, but again, they tied Chelsea again. And I've been keenly aware of this because as a Liverpool fan, who like wants us to win the EPL this year, I've been literally like this as a fan, right? Like you look at the games and you're like, I hope Man City drop points in this game, and we desperately need them to. And every single time they've been dropping those points. Now compare this to last year, right? Um, like they still like dropped points in some like big matches, right? They lost to Liverpool in October, and that was like a bad Liverpool team. Um, they still like took care of business when it mattered. Like Manchester United was a lot better last year. They thoroughly embarrassed them. They beat Chelsea. Again disorganized, but still always a good squad. Beat Chelsea again. They lost to Man U, which isn't good, but they beat Spurs. They humiliated Arsenal this last year. I think they beat them in all of their matchups. Lost to Tottenham, beat Arsenal, um, beat Newcastle, beat Liverpool, and then beat Arsenal the third time that they faced them. Right, so they really took care of business in a way that they just aren't this year. Um, Now, with all that being said, right, like I think that they're very beatable this year. But the question is like, who is actually going to be the one that beats them? So you know these uh, these are the squads from the round of 16. I'm just gonna dismiss. Like I know that like people might get angry at me for this, but like I'm just gonna dismiss PSV, Porto. You know, I think Real Sociedad already lost, but like I'm gonna just dismiss them because like if you look at the list of like Champions League champions, the only team from not a big four that's won in the past 25 years has been that Jose Marino Porto squad. So like sorry, I don't really like give a lot of credence to these other teams. But if you look at this, right? So like we have Bayern Munich, which took care of business against Lazio yesterday. Like they are always a big threat. Like they have an incredibly talented squad. I just like this is the Bundesliga this year. They're 10 points behind Bayer Leverkusen, and I just believe in the curse of Harry Kane. I believe in curses. Sorry. Um, Dortmund. The problem with Dortmund is like, look, they're 20 points behind, right? So if Bayern Munich can't do it, Dortmund certainly can. The thing about Dortmund is that they are, as everyone knows, they're like basically like a feeder team to the larger teams. What they do is they invest in a lot of young talent, they develop that talent, they put them on a big stage, and then they flip that talent to another team, right? Dembele, Pulisic, obviously Holland. Jude Bellingham. That's basically what their business model is. And this year that they're kind of in like in a revamp year where they're like trying to build out that roster again. So I don't think they really have the talent to go head to head against Man City. Now, if you go to La Liga, right, like Real Madrid, I think they can definitely beat Man City. I think in a head-to-head matchup, Real Madrid kind of humiliates them. But besides that, like, Atletico and Barcelona, if we're looking at La Liga, like they're both like incredibly underperforming this year. Both like Barcelona's 8 points back, Atletico's 11 points back from um, from Real Madrid, and they're also like behind Girona as well, which isn't a good sign. Um, you know, both of those teams just kind of lack, the cohesion that they've had in the past. Plus, like, I know it's just been kind of one matchup, but like, it seems that like whenever Manchester City faces against Atletico Madrid, wait, what? That's weird. Yeah, this is in Manchester United. It seems like every time that like Manchester City faces against Atletico Madrid, they Pep kind of has his number. Like Barcelona, like their issue right now is that like one Xavi's leaving, so like I don't know, I don't really like believe in a team where the manager's on his way out. But like we have Robert Lewandowski, who's pretty over the hill, and then you have a lot of like young talent that still needs to develop and still needs to like become who they are. Like Frankie De Jong, I know he's like 24, 25, but like you know they have Pedri, Gavi, all these players that just aren't there yet. Where like I'd put money on them against Manchester City. So moving on to Italy, Inter Milan is the only team left, and Napoli is facing against Barcelona tomorrow. So like let's start with Napoli. Napoli is 29 points behind Inter. They're actually closer to relegation than they are to being number one. They're not the Napoli of last year, and even the Napoli of last year was a little bit of a paper tiger. We just can't really put faith in them. Now, Inter, that's kind of the obvious answer. Like maybe Inter is the team that can beat Manchester City. I don't really buy it. If you look at Inter last year, that's kind of the argument, right? They went to the Champions League final last year, but like Inter kind of had like a pretty easy run. I know, like, by the way, I'm just admitting, like, as a Liverpool fan, we had literally the same kind of run the year before. Inter Milan, Benfica, Villarreal. It's not a tough road when you're facing Porto, Benfica, and Milan. Like that's not like Manchester City in order to get to the final last year had to beat RB Leipzig, which is frisky, not great, but Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. That's not like I just don't really trust Inter. But not only that, like I'm sorry to say, but like I just don't really trust Italy as much. So if you look at FIFA's country coefficients, Italy. So basically, what they do is they give out points to each league based upon like how well they perform in international competition. Italy has 84 points. England has 100. I just like you know I just don't trust Italy. I think that like Italy and Germany are very clearly tier two of the big four. And Spain, like if you take out Real Madrid and Barcelona, they would be in that same tier as well, right? Like England, because of all the money that's been pouring into it, are just way better. But then also like you look at Italy's performance over the past 5 years, right? So Inter Milan had a good year, but before that, like in 2022, not a single Italian team made it to the quarterfinals. There were two of them that year. The year before that, not a single Italian team made it to the quarterfinals. There were three last year, the year three in the round of 16. Look at the year before that, only one team made it to the quarterfinals out of three, and that team didn't make it to the semifinals. Look at the year before that, 2019. Juventus went to the quarterfinals and they didn't, progress past that. Um, and like we can even go the year before that, like Roma went to the semifinals, and Roma and Juventus were in the quarterfinals. Italy has just has just kind of been in a downward spiral for a long time now, right? Because of all the money that's leaving. So yes, Inter is number one in the Italian league with 72, and they're really like pulling away. Maybe they can challenge Manchester City, but I just don't see it. Now, finally, we go to England. We only have one English team, which is Arsenal. Um, Arsenal just doesn't really. Arsenal just kind of seems like a paper tiger to me. I know that they've been really good the past like month or so, right? 6-0 Sheffield, 4-1 Newcastle, 5-0 Burnley, 6-0 West Ham, which is a good squad. 3-1 Liverpool, obviously great squad, greatest squad of all time, Liverpool. 2-1 Nottingham Forest, 5-0. Like they have been putting in like really good wins. The problem is like one, a lot of their team like hasn't really tasted victory. If you look at this like Real Madrid squad from 2 years ago. Like the reason why they won is because they were all just like seasoned vets that have played together, right? Look at the year before with Chelsea. Like they had a lot of vets as well who have like been through a lot of tough games, and that really matters. And like Arsenal, like everyone remembers, the year before, right, where they were about to win the Premier League and they just folded, down the stretch. They lost to Brighton, they lost to Nottingham Forest, um, they lost to Man City, they tied Southampton. Like this isn't a team that I really trust under pressure. So I guess like my conclusion to this is like I think that Manchester City is like the weakest that they've ever been. Obviously, like uh, getting into the spring it changes, but at the same time like Manchester City like also like folds a lot. But the problem is like even though they're as weak as they've ever been, I don't really see like who's the team that beats them. Real Madrid has a talent, Bayern Munich has a talent, even though they have the curse of Harry Kane, and then everyone else just kind of knows. So if I kind of had to put my money on it, I would say that Manchester City goes to the champ, assuming they don't get drawn in the same side of the bracket as Real. Basically, I think that Manchester City goes as far until they face Real Madrid and they lose to Real Madrid when they face them.